One green light squinted over Kidd's Creek.
which is near the mouth of the Pirate River.
The Jolly Roger lay low in the water.
A speedy-looking craft, foul to the hull, every beam in her detestable.
A few of the pirates leant over the bulwarks.
Drinking in the putrid mist of the night.
Others sprawled by barrels over the games of dice and cards.
Hook trod the deck in thought.
Oh, man unfathomable.
It was his hour of triumph.
Peter had been removed from his path.
And all the other boys were in the brig, about to walk the plank.
But there was no elation in his gait,
which kept pace with the action of his sombre mind.
Hook was profoundly dejected.
He was often thus when communing with himself on board ship, with the quietude of the night. It was because he was so terribly alone.
This inscrutable man never felt more alone than when surrounded by his dogs.
They were socially inferior to him.
Ah.
Envy not Hook.
There came to him a presentiment of his early death.
It was as if Peter's terrible oath had boarded the ship.
Hook felt a gloomy desire to make his dying speech.
Lest presently there should be no time for it.
Better for Hook if he had had less ambition.
It was in his darkest hours only that he referred to himself in the third person.
No, little children to love me.
Strange that he should think of this.
Which had never troubled him before.
Perhaps the sewing machine brought it to his mind.
For long he muttered to himself, staring at Smee,
who was hemming placidly,
under the conviction that all children feared him.
Feared him?
Yes.
Feared Smee?
There was not a child on board the brig that night who did not already love him.
Michael had tried on his spectacles.
To tell poor Smee that they thought him lovable. Hook itched to do it.
But it seemed too brutal. Instead,
he revolved this mystery in his mind.
Why do they find Smee lovable?
He pursued the problem like the sleuth hound that he was.
If Smee was lovable,
what was it that made him so?
With a cry of rage, he raised his iron hand over Smee's head.
But he did not care. What arrested him was this reflection.
To claw a man because he is lovable. What would that be?
The unhappy Hook was as powerless as he was damp.
And he fell forward like a cut flower.
His dogs, thinking him out of the way for a time,
discipline instantly relaxed.
And they broke into a dancing, drunken dance.
Which brought him to his feet at once.
All traces of human weakness gone.
As if a bucket of water had passed over him.
Quiet, you scugs, or I'll cast anchor in you.
All at once, the din was hushed.
Are all the children chained so that they cannot fly away?
Aye, aye.
Then hoist them up.
Prisoners were dragged from the hold.
All except Wendy.
And ranged in line in front of him.
For a time, he seemed unconscious of their presence.
He lolled at his ease, humming.
Not unmelodiously.
Snatches of a rude song and fingering a pack of cards.
Ever and anon, the light from his cigar gave a touch of colour to his cheeks.
Now then, bullies, you walk the plank tonight. But I have room for 2 cabin boys. Which of you is it to be?
Don't irritate him unnecessarily.
Had been Wendy's instructions in the hold.
So Tootles stepped forward politely.
Tootles hated the idea of signing under such a man, but an instinct told him that it would be prudent to lay the responsibility on an absent person. And though a somewhat silly boy, he knew that mothers alone are always willing to be the buffer.
All children know this about mothers and despise them for it, but make constant use of it.
So Tootles explained prudently.
You see, sir, I don't think my mother would like me to be a pirate. Would your mother like you to be a pirate, Slightly?
I don't think so.
Nibs, would your mother like to?
Stow this gab! You boy!
he said, addressing John.
You look as if you had a little pluck in you. Didst never want to be a pirate, my hearty?
Now, John had sometimes experienced this hankering at maths prep, and he was struck by Hook's picking him out.
I once thought of calling myself Red-Handed Jack.
And a good name too. We'll call you that here, bully, if you join.
What do you think, Michael?
What would you call me if I join?
Blackbeard Joe.
And Michael was naturally impressed.
What do you think, John?
He wanted John to decide, and John wanted him to decide.
Shall we still be respectful subjects of the king?
Through Hook's teeth came the answer.
You would have to swear down with the king.
Well, perhaps John had not behaved very well so far, but he shone out now.
Then I refuse.
And I refuse.
Rule Britannia.
Hook roared out.
That seals your doom. Bring up their mother. Get the plank ready.
They were only boys.
And they went white as they saw Jukes and Checo preparing the fatal plank.
But they tried to look brave when Wendy was brought up.
No words of mine can tell you how Wendy despised those pirates.
To the boys, there was at least some glamour in the pirate calling.
But all that she saw was that the ship had not been tidied for years.
There was not a porthole on the grimy glass of which you might not have written with your finger, "Dirty pig."
And she had already written it on several.
But the boys gathered round her, and she had no thought, of course, save for them.
So, my beauty, you are to see your children walk the plank.
Fine gentleman though he was.
The intensity of his communings had soiled his ruff.
And suddenly, he knew that she was gazing at it.
With a hasty gesture, he tried to hide it.
But he was too late.
Are they to die?
They are. Silence all, for a mother's last words to her children.
At this moment, Wendy was grand.
These are my last words, dear boys. I feel that I have a message to you from your real mothers, and it is this. We hope our sons will die like English gentlemen. I'm going to do what my mother hopes. What are you to do, Nibs?
What my mother hopes. What are you to do, Curly? What my mother hopes, John. What are you?
But Hook had found his voice again.
Tie her up!
It was me who tied her to the mast.
Now, see here, honey. I'll save you if you promise to be my mother.
But not even for Smee would she make such a promise.
I would almost rather have no children at all.
It is sad to know that not a boy was looking at her as Smee tied her to the mast.
The eyes of all were on the plank.
That last little walk they were about to take.
Hook smiled on them with his teeth closed.
And took a step toward Wendy.
His intention was to turn her face so that she should see the boys walking the plank one by one.
But he never reached her.
He never heard the cry of anguish he hoped to wring from her.
He heard something else instead.
It was the terrible tick-tick of the crocodile.
They all heard it.
Pirates.
Boys,
Wendy?
And immediately every head was blown in one direction.
Not to the water, whence the sound proceeded.
but toward Hook.
All knew that what was about to happen
And that
concerned
from
him
being
alone.
actors, they were suddenly become spectators.
Very frightful was it to see the change that came over him.
It was as he had been clipped at every joint.
He fell in a little heap,
The sound came steadily nearer.
and in advance of it came this ghastly thought.
The crocodile is about to board the ship.
Even the iron claw hung inactive, as if knowing that it was no intrinsic part of what the attacking force wanted.
Left so fearfully alone, any other man would have lain with his eyes shut where he fell,
But the gigantic brain of Hook was still working.
and under its guidance, he crawled on the knees along the deck as far from the sound as he could go.
The pirates respectfully cleared a passage for him.
It was only when he brought up against the bulwarks that he spoke.
Hide me!
They gathered round him, all eyes averted from the thing that was coming aboard.
They had no thought of fighting it.
It was fate.
Only when Hook was hidden from them did curiosity loosen the limbs of the boys so that they could rush to the ship's side to see the crocodile climbing it.
Then they got the strangest surprise of the night of nights.
For it was a crocodile that was coming to their aid.
It was Peter.